Very happy now to be joined by a great friend of the program, as
Good
we
to
do
be
always
here.
at the Combine, ESPN NFL analyst, draft analyst, Field Yates.
Feels very professional. I love it.
It is professional. And Field, I got to be honest with you, I am so glad that we're doing this now, because a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if we would have been sitting down here doing this interview. You were passing on a quarterback for the Browns at 2, giving them to, I think, the Giants and maybe the Raiders, and saying how great it was for them. And we're like, but we
What
need
about
one
us?
too.
Yeah.
What about us?
Yeah.
And then Adam Schefter, your colleague, goes on, and you say all future mocks will have a quarterback to the Browns at 2. And look, and now here we are, and it's joyous.
There are a few rules that I follow in life. One of them is my wife is always correct. The second one is that Schefter speaks, I listen. Or if he tweets, I listen as well. And so, yeah, I mean, when Adam Schefter is that assertive in his opinion about what's going to happen, and the time that tweet went out, or the clip went out, was over 2 months in advance of the draft. It tells me that, the man who knows all certainly knows something in this case. So the Browns will be getting a quarterback in all future mock drafts that come from me, and probably all of my colleagues at ESPN as well.
Music to our ears. So we definitely think that is what we need, right?
Yeah,
I mean, to try to get out of the position we're in. And going back to Schefter, I've interviewed him. He doesn't give opinions.
Correct.
So if he says something like
he's
that,
not doing that. What he thinks he's doing, he's telling you what he is hearing.
Yes.
And the man's got a pretty darn good track record, I would say.
Indeed, he does. All right, here you are in Indy.
Yeah.
For you, what are you hoping to, when you come here? What's kind of the top things on your agenda?
Well, it's a piece of the puzzle. It's not the biggest piece of the puzzle, but I always like to get a sense of where I view players coming into it, and then get a sense of where I view players coming out of it. In the case of the vast majority of players, I don't know that my opinion will be dramatically influenced by what takes place this weekend. I'm also mindful of what the historical data of the draft has told us about certain players at certain positions. And I'll give you some examples here to kind of paint a picture of what I'm discussing. Like Will Johnson from Michigan, cornerback, who will not be working out this week. But if he had, there's some questions within the scouting community about what the top-end speed is for Will. I'm not particularly concerned myself, but I also know that if this guy runs, if he were to run, and he ran a 4.51, there's not a lot of recent precedent of a 4.51 corner going in the first 10 picks of the draft. Tetairoa McMillan from Arizona, another guy who I believe is an outstanding prospect. Same deal kind of applies, right? There are some questions about how exactly fast is his fastest fast. And if the answer is it's 4.51, again, people have said, well, Mike Evans went 7th overall in a 4.53. I don't generally love to compare guys to me, first ballot Hall of Famers, right? Like Mike strikes me as much more the exception than the rule in that category. So generally speaking, if a guy runs a slower time than the positional average or norm, it might influence his stock. And at the very top of the board, the difference between going 8th and 18th or 6th and 16th is dramatic enough. So those are some of the specific examples that I have my eye on. And there will always be a couple of guys who maybe the testing numbers are incongruent with what you saw on tape, and they make you rethink some things for better or worse.
Right, and you want to it's a lot of getting confirmation, hopefully, or sending you back to the tape and saying, what do we see here?
Totally. That is a big part of it as well. And, I hope that I don't have too many guys where I'm going back and having to rethink my evaluation, because I do want the tape to influence the vast majority of your analysis. But it's a part of the puzzle that you can't ignore.
By the way, I'd love T-Mac to somehow be available to the Browns, maybe later in the first, move up from 33. That would be fantastic.
Right? Yep.
I would certainly be all about that. All right, in this draft, what are some of the positions? We'll talk quarterbacks, obviously.
Sure.
But what are some of the positions that you really like or feel that have good value into day 2 and maybe even into day 3?
Yeah, there's going to be 3 that I'm sure you've heard time and again, so I'll just quickly reiterate those for maybe somebody who's not as deeply invested in the draft. Running back, historically great. I asked Mel Kiper, who's been doing this for 47 years in a professional capacity, if it's the deepest he's ever seen, and he thinks that's the answer. So Mel says it. Carries a lot of value in my book. Defensive tackle is outstanding as well, and then tight end's very good. What I think is particularly, I think the important part about this is it's one thing to tell you it's deep. What I think that was unique is it's different shapes and sizes. It's like going to, it's like going to the ice cream parlor, right? Like you've got every different type of running back available, right? So you've got some guys. Ashton Jeanty, I believe, is in a tier unto himself at the very top of that running back heap. I think from there, you might see a running back go in the first round late. Omarion Hampton from North Carolina, maybe Caleb Johnson from Iowa. I view those guys in a cut below Ashton Genty. But you get to the third and fourth round, and it's like, do you want the most prolific pass catcher in the FBS last year amongst running backs on LaQuint Allen from Syracuse? Do you want a guy in Cam Shedeur who had the second most broken tackles last year, only behind Ashton Genty, who had 88? Shedeur had a mere 68. So, that tells you how mortal these guys are compared to him. Do you want players like R.J. Harvey from UCF, who was just lightning in a bottle? He to me, reminds me of Bucky Irving from Tampa, went in the fourth round out of Oregon last year. You've got guys on day 3 that have minimal tread on the tires. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt's a player, played one game at Arizona this past season, and then because of eligibility issues, was not able to play the rest of the year. Alabama State to New Mexico. This guy's got all kinds of juice. Big, impressive-looking athlete. You just keep going, and you're like, oh my God, like Basil Tootin from Virginia Tech. This
which
guy,
is a great name.
Which 266 yards against Boston College in a single game, most by any Virginia Tech running back in school history in a single game. Like, you've got all different levels of depth. Those are just like random ones that I thought of on day 3. So you've got that. Same thing for the defensive tackle position. I believe Mason Graham belongs truthfully in the conversation of that top tier of players in this class. I would view it as really a 4-man tier at the very top, and probably like a half line of delineation. Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, and then Ashton Genty and Mason Graham. He's outstanding, but it just keeps going and going and going.
So you did not say a quarterback in those top 4. I think Mel has the quarterbacks. I think maybe
I think
3
Mel
and
is
4.
Or 4 and 5, 3 or 4. Yeah,
right,
it's very high.
Range,
yes, yep.
Where are you with these quarterbacks?
So I'm a little bit less optimistic, but I also understand that both of them are going to go higher in the draft than where I have them graded. In a vacuum, I have a higher grade on Cam Ward. I believe he has – I've been using this term often in describing him, but I call it second reaction plays. It's when things don't go well.
Absolutely.
Do you have an opportunity? Do you have a changeup that can maybe turn a negative into a positive? He's not this exceedingly dynamic athlete like Jaden Daniels or Caleb May or Drake May at the top of the board last year. He's a very good athlete, though. He's not going to be a statue in the pocket. He's a better athlete than Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur, I think, is a more accurate, better pocket passer. Cam has stronger arms, can throw from a lot of different angles. He was part of the reason why Miami fell behind a lot last year. He had some uncharacteristic early mistakes in games, but he also has some serious fourth-quarter magic. Yeah. Yes, the Cal kind of trying to throw the ball all the way across the field, like an example of a play that I'm sure the minute he threw that ball, he was like, no, what was I thinking there? But he's got some fourth-quarter magic to him as well, that he was very much unflappable when the game was on the line, and Miami played a ton of close games. So there's a lot to like about Cam and Shedeur for that matter, but my grade for each of them is, in the case of Cam, it's 12, and Shedeur, it's 19. So we're talking about those guys going in the first maybe 5 picks.
Yeah.
Is it a reach? I don't know. I mean, it's the most important
position
in sports, and if those guys hit, then – who cares? We took him 220, 200th. Like, it doesn't matter.
If you're convicted, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. And you need to be on quarterbacks, or else it's not worth taking one, in my opinion.
Yeah, and hopefully the Browns, they've got a good staff in place, obviously with Kevin Stefanski, Tommy Reese, Bill Musgrave to kind of nurture this quarterback. You have some of the old, you have some of the new, and then you have Kevin. So I think both of them give a good opportunity. I almost see Shedeur kind of in our scheme if we go back to that kind of
I would agree.
Wide zone, maybe as a better scheme fit. But to your point earlier, I think Cam is a better ball of clay. There's more tools.
Yeah. That's why the in a vacuum part of the conversation is important here. And, yeah, I mean, so if you think about the most recent quarterback that Kevin had a lot of sustained success with, Kirk Cousins, right? Shedeur more profiles like Kirk Cousins than he does than Cam Ward does, right? Shedeur's a better athlete than Kirk, but he's not he's a fine athlete by quarterback standards, especially in today's NFL.
Yes. He's a pocket passer. He's going to have to win most. As his career progresses, he is going to have win before the ball is snapped more often than not.
That was probably the thing that I thought was the most interesting in watching Kirk Cousins on Quarterback, the Netflix documentary, was him talking about how, like, he feels by the time the game begins on Sunday that he has emptied the bucket in terms of every possible thing that he could do to ensure that before the snap, I have an idea of what it's going to look like after the snap. And you got to be nimble and dynamic and be able to react. But a lot of times, especially in that scheme, the way they're dialing it up, like, you got a pretty good chance if you just follow orders, continue to make a profit by, moving the football down the field. So for the Browns specifically, if you ask me, like, if the scheme is going to look like what it did when Kevin first arrived.
Yeah.
I would say Shedeur Sanders looks like a more hand-in-glove fit. That being said, if you have a stronger overall opinion of Cam Ward, like I do, you have to consider him, especially this high in the draft.
What are you hearing in relation to, because it felt like, and now we got a little Abdul Carter news, but now we're saying it's actually not news, and we'll see how it goes. But, at least in the conversations I'd had, I kind of got the sense that Tennessee was not really that interested in taking a quarterback.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, if you're the Browns, and let's say you are running the Browns and you are more convicted, you would want Cam Ward. Do you explore going up to number 1? Because I remember 2016, I'm sure you do as well. Titans won, Browns 2. Browns wanted Goff.
Yep.
They stayed there. Titans aren't taking a quarterback. And then here come the Rams.
Yeah, so it's something to consider for sure. And there's really no price to pay that's too steep if you get the quarterback that you want and he ends up being a good player as well. I do think, though, like if we're talking about and I hate to just use the most obvious example, but the Trey Lance package from a few years ago where it's 2 plus the 2026 one plus more, like I'd be really wary of that.
Yeah, no.
Especially given the lack of first-round picks the Browns have had.
We're just happy to have one. We're happy
to have one here. So I would be, I would make the call, but I would make sure that it's as close to being on your terms as possible.
All right, we'll get you out of here, and this is always a pleasure. Combine about medicals. I want to know where are we at here. Are we fully recovered? You full green light?
I have been given the green light by my surgeon. I'm about, 6 months post-labrum tear, and I feel great. There are mornings where I wake up stiff, though, which I'm telling myself it's about the shoulder. It
You're
might
way
just
too
be
young.
age.
No, stop
37's hitting me hard right now.
Stop it.
So,
46, come
46,
on.
you
Please,
look great,
you're
though.
fine.
Come
you're
on.
fine.
No, age is just a number. But no, I feel good.
Good.
You can't tell, but I have been pumping some iron.
No, you
Again,
look fantastic.
I
It's a
wish,
nicely fitted shirt.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, I just buy tight shirts, so I look like I actually have some muscle mass on me.
That is a great secret, Field. Thanks so much, man.
Good to see you, man.
All right, good to see you as
Be
well.
well. Take
Thanks.
care.
Yep.